What's up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we are talking about week 24, the final week in the Overwatch League regular season. We're going to preview a couple of matches, the ones that matter. We're going to talk a little bit about standings. If you didn't see the last episode, I dove into quite a bit of who can do what, and we'll go over a little bit of that today. The teams that possibly could move up into the playoff top six and move down. There's only a couple of them that can jockey around. And we'll talk about what they have to do to get in, who they have to beat, etc. Because a couple of the teams that are involved in it are playing. But before we dive into that, I'd like to thank all you guys for joining me. Thank you very, very much for all of your support this season and the last 5 seasons. Or if you've been around for one day, thank you very much. If you're new, just checking me out. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on. Might amp it up a little bit here because we got awards. We got play-ins in APAC this week, so look for an episode of that coming up probably Friday. I'm going to do that separately than the Week 24 preview prediction kind of thing, talking about what's left in the West. I'm going to separate that because those games, the 2 games that are going to happen, are more important than the majority of the games that are happening in the final week of the regular season in the Overwatch League. Without further ado, let's get into a quick recap of the standings and talk about who can move up, move down, at least as far as who is involved in this week's action. 2 big ones are London and Toronto. They're the ones that have a chance to go up into the top 6, or down in London's case. But they have a couple of matches. We're going to talk about those really quick. Okay, so these teams are in: Dallas, Gladiators, San Francisco, Houston, and the Atlanta Reign. They all had their spots secured. There can be some jockeying around a position here. The only team that can move in the top 3 is the San Francisco Shock, because they're the only team left playing as far as that goes. The Shock have the Paris Eternal, and they have the London Spitfire, who need 2 wins probably to keep Toronto at bay. Toronto has to beat the Mayhem and the Outlaws to have a shot at moving above London. Give me a tougher task for them, but you never know what can happen. But the only team in the top 3 that can move up right now, as we speak, is the Shock. And if they get 2 points, I believe they can tie with Dallas points-wise. Then it gets into map win percentage and points and map differential and that kind of thing. So we'll see what happens there. They have a couple of close matches. It doesn't matter. They'll go 1 map over. I think not 100% on if it's the map differential itself, like the number, or the map win-loss percentage. There's a shot for San Francisco to bounce up into the number 1 spot, needless to say. Because if Dallas right now, 61-26 on maps, San Francisco 59-25. So if the Shock lose 2 maps, they're done. As far as being able to beat the Dallas Fuel out in the map win percentage, which I believe is the tiebreaker. It's not, I wish they had the percentage up there. I don't feel like doing the math on that. I'm not good at the maths. So we're not going to get into that right now. You got Houston sitting at 19 points. They're pretty much set where they are. Atlanta, set where they are. Florida could move up or down depending on what Boston does and what they do. Washington is off. So Mayhem wins 2. They pick up 2 more points. Potentially, they could go above the Washington Justice into the 8th spot, knock them down. I don't think that's going to happen, seeing that they have Toronto and Houston. I don't think it's a 2-0 week for the Mayhem. Lucky if they get 1-1 and maintain possibly the 9th spot. There's no way really for Boston to overtake Florida. They're kind of locked in the 10 spot. 8-14, 8 points. So biggest match of the week is probably, you could say, the most on the line, not directly involving each other, but it's going to be Florida-Toronto. That's going to kick off on Friday, last match of the day. And then we also have London taking on New York that day. London also has the Shock on Saturday. So the Defiant will know where they stand and what they need to do before they play their last game. So Spitfire has to at least go 1-1. Toronto would have to go 2-0 and potentially tie them points-wise. That would put them both at 16. So in actuality, if you look at it, London's probably going to be the New York Excelsior. I don't see a world where New York beats them. Yeah, New York has done better, but right now I got to go with London in that match. I really don't want to talk too much about that one. Toronto, Florida, we'll talk a little bit about. That one's got a lot more on the line. Toronto coming in looking like everyone thought they would look in the beginning of the year. They have one final shot here to solidify their spot, and potentially they have two final shots, I should say, to get themselves into the playoffs. It's not going to be an easy road. They have to beat Mayhem, who are scrappy. They're not the greatest at what the metas and stuff. They just kind of jump all around, and they're kind of reeling as far as any of the teams concerned. Now, if the meta fleshes out the way it kind of looks like it's going to, where people are starting to play this Zarya Bap Lucio thing going on, I would have to go with Toronto in a matchup of that, personally. I just think that their support line is way better, and I just think that Hotba on Zarya is going to prove to be a big deciding factor. Someone is good. He's flexible, but almost to a fault. He's almost a little too flexible. And they're not as coordinated as Toronto is right now. I would love to say that my team, the Mayhem, is going to give them a fight. I think it's going to be Toronto knowing that they have to win, Florida knowing they have to win, but they're still in the play-ins. They could be just working on meta stuff or compositions, cohesion, whatever you want to call it. They could just be using this as a weekend where they're like, look, we're in this situation. We're going to have to see where we seed, because the only thing they can do is move up. They can't move down into 10. So they're either 9 or 8. They're either going to be playing, most likely they're going to end up playing Washington the way it looks, as far as the play-ins go. So if you go in the theoretical land of what these guys could potentially play, I like Toronto. I said Toronto was trash at the beginning of the year, but you know what? They've come around. They're playing better since they switched out their coach. They've been playing a lot better, honestly. They've been playing a little bit more cohesive. They look good in the last meta. They made it into, I think, the losers bracket final. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. In the Summer Showdown, different meta, different craziness going on with that. But they showed up at home and all that stuff. The Mayhem haven't showed up. As usual, they have not really shown up since May. The first out of the gates, they're that horse in a horse race that like charges out in front of everybody, and then slowly by the end of the race, coming around the final turn, they're holding on to try and stay in the top 5 or 10 or wherever they're at. They're in the 9 spot. This means something to the Mayhem, but it means more to Toronto. If you really look at it that way, I like also, on top of the other reasons I've given in this matchup, you got to go with the Defiant in this. I'm taking them 3-1 in this matchup because everything's on the line for the Defiant. They have to stay in at least the horse race with, I'm using a lot of horse racing references. I don't know why. They have to stay in the race with London, who's got New York. I mean, if New York comes out and beats London, it provides an opportunity for Toronto to jump ahead. So they're either going to have a chance to leapfrog them right off or keep with them and then have to try and beat the Outlaws on Sunday, last game of the weekend, where we could potentially have the last playoff spot get solidified. Now, it's all dependent on Shock London, of course. Shock come out and they lay off the gas and they just work on things that they've been working on and aren't doing anything. They might want to try and get that top spot back. So if they come at them full force, the Shock, and beat the Spitfire, Toronto also has an opportunity there. But laying in the wings is the Outlaws, who look so much better with Dante recently. I mean, he's proven to be pretty versatile. And, as much as we, made fun of the Daunt Fist or Doomtay or whatever you wanted to call it, he's progressed into a national tank player. Whether he likes it or not, he's playing well. So at least with playing Zarya, it's a tracking kind of role. If you remember Goats, any of you guys out there, they had a lot of your hits like a lot of Tracer players are playing Zarya. You just got to get the bubble management down and things like that. Diva as well. A lot of people, if you're newer, people used to call her way back in the day Fat Tracer, right? You run around, you're spraying bullets, you're taking care of things, fast moving, tracking aim, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's a lot more to Diva's kit than, there's the micro missiles, defense matrix, all that kind of damage mitigation, all that kind of stuff that you have to do with D.Va that you don't do with Tracer. But theoretically speaking, or at least on paper, if you look at it, big Tracer. So he can play both of those roles, which works out for him. And for the Outlaws, pretty good. But as far as them facing Toronto, I think that's going to be a great match, honestly. But it like I said, contingent upon what happens in that match against between London and Shock, which I do like the Shock in that one. I'm not going to lie. Close one. I think London's going to be going for the knockout punch, trying to stay a couple points ahead of Toronto. Now, in the world where Mayhem beats Defiant are in big trouble. Especially, I think that screws the whole pooch for them. If they lose to the Mayhem, they're done, I believe. Unless London catastrophically fails and we get to the Outlaws game again. Now, the way I'm looking at the Outlaws and the Defiant, I feel like the Outlaws have been the regular season team. I think they're priming themselves and building themselves up right now to be ready to go for the actual playoffs. They can have days where they lose to teams like Washington or the Mayhem, but on the whole, they have beaten pretty much every good team in this league right now. They own Dallas on land, at least in Texas. So with the guys they have on this team, you got Merritt, Dante, Lastro, and Pelican. You have a really good team, and you throw in creative, and they're looking pretty good with him. I'm not going to lie. It's looking pretty solid. What I'm getting at is it's going to be very tough for Toronto to beat the Houston Outlaws right now. Can they do it? Yeah, they can. Their lineup has been playing really solidly. I like what I've been seeing from them. Their back line is, bar none, one of the best in the league. It's providing a lot of the support that they need for guys like Hisu, Hotba. There's reason, those guys stay alive in fights and stuff longer. Obviously, when you have a back line like that, and they make big plays too. They're not shy about, doing damage when they have to, big nades, beating at the right time if they need to do that, or, lamps, all that kind of stuff. They're just good at it. And when you get into a situation where you have two guys doing that kind of stuff, your team's going to perform better. And once these guys got a little bit of cohesion and a little bit of, experience with each other, they looked a lot better. And, I was wrong. At least to a certain point, I thought they were going to be in the play-ins, which they kind of are, but I thought they would be below, Mayhem, Washington. I didn't think they were going to be above them fighting to get into the top 6. In that match, though, that final match of the regular season, which is going to matter most likely, I got to go with Houston in this 3-2. Toronto's still going to be in the play-ins, but I think that they're going to just fall a little bit short of the top 6, which is okay. You know what? You get it into the play-ins, you still have a shot. There are teams that are beatable for you. It's okay. Anything can happen in a play-in situation. We've seen this before. And if the meta changes or switches or flip-flops or whatever, with the patch update with Kariko being in there, I don't know if they're going to play that much Kariko. And it's not because of her kit and all that. So I think there's some guys are going to be sick on her. It's just the timing, and you could just see that this Bap Lucio thing just works better. Or Zen Lucio, or Zen Anna, or however you want to run your backline. There could be things that just work better. Because as good as that ultimate is and some of the utilities she has, there's better things right now provide more healing. So you probably, Bap is one of them. I mean, Bap can provide just as much damage output. He's got Lamp. He's got Amp Matrix. Plus he's got the Shift, Heal. He's got a lot of healing. Kariko can get you out of trouble. She can create a lot of problems for you with her headshot crit ability, but you got to hit those headshots and all that stuff. At least with BAP, you don't necessarily have to do that. That's just my take on that really quick. But that's what I'm seeing as far as this goes, the way things are going to shake down this week. Real quick, we'll do pick'ems for all the matches because we do every week. So let's dive into it. Final week of the regular season. We have to do this. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. We got to get them. After the week I had last week, I'm raring to go. I want to get my pick'ems in. Also, they do not have the pick'ems up for, just so you know, for the, I don't know if it's going to come live at a different point, but they do not have the play-in bracket or anything of that ilk for the East. So there's no East predictions on the pick'em page. Whether it involves a bracket or otherwise, it's not there. At least not for me. I also forgot to do my crystal ball picks. Makes me sad, because I usually hit those and they give me more points. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Okay, here we go. Final weekend regular season in the West. We have, starting Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, London, New York. We talked about it a little bit. I like London 3-1. Next match, Shock versus Eternal. I'll take the Shock 3-0 in this one. Final match of Saturday, the big one for playoff positioning, jockeying around, etc., what have you. One of them, at least. We talked about it earlier. Toronto taking on Florida. I like Toronto 3-1. Moving on to Saturday, we have the London Spitfire taking on the San Francisco Shock. I like the San Francisco Shock 3-2 in this, in a close one. London goes 1-1. As it stands in my predictions right now, Toronto 1-0. Next match on Saturday, Boston versus New York. I think Boston's going to end on a high note, 3-0. New York has nothing to play for, so I really don't foresee them showing up. Maybe they do try to spoil something. It's not going to do anything good for them or do anything to Boston. Who knows? Final match of Saturday, Houston Outlaws taking on the Florida Mayhem. I think Outlaws are too much for the Mayhem, 3-1 Outlaws. Sunday, final day, regular season, action in the Overwatch League Western Division. Paris Eternal, Boston Uprising. I like Boston 3-0. And closing out the regular season, the Toronto Defiant, Houston Outlaws. Everything's on the table here for Toronto. We talked about this one earlier. I like the Outlaws 3-2. All right, guys. That's the pick'ems for the final week of the regular season. And that's going to do it for this episode. Stay tuned. Friday, I'm going to have my APAC East Division, whatever you want to call it, play-in prediction show up. Just a short one, probably about 10, 12 minutes long. There's only 2 matches that we need to talk about. 3 teams. We'll have it up Friday. It'll be ready to go. You guys can watch that and get ready for those matches. Hopefully they have something as far as pick'ems. Maybe we're not going to do pick'ems for the play-ins, which kind of sucks because I like doing pick'ems. It's fun. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. All your support's greatly, greatly appreciated. All the likes, subscribes, all that stuff. I appreciate all of it immensely. And if you've been supporting me for 1 day or 5 years, thank you very much as well. If you're new, just joined in the program, made it to the end of the video, please hit a like, hit a subscribe. That helps me out. As far as the YouTube algorithms go, it would be greatly appreciated. All right, guys, this is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next one.